You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Hi, it's Deb in Halifax.
Hi, it's Simone in Vancouver.
Hey, it's Tanya in Edmonton.
Our latest read is Pebble Dove from Amy Jones. A once famous but now abandoned aquarium in a ship in Florida is the backdrop for this novel of family secrets and dysfunction and the ways in which it can sometimes take an animal to remind us how to be human. This is a story of a family falling apart only to be brought back together again by that unlikely champion, a 1,000-pound manatee named Pebble. Lauren's life is a mess with a teen daughter, Dove, who barely speaks to her. There are quite a few secrets. It's a little dark, but very moving as they try to figure out how to choose between what's worth saving and what needs to be let go. Okay, ladies, your thoughts. How are you feeling?
There's
so many feelings.
There's a lot to take in. So many feelings with this book. My goodness. A lot of different themes. I don't know, just the dysfunction family, like we're talking 3 generations of dysfunction in a family, and about animals, a commentary almost, I thought about animals in captivity and whether, whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing, and a lot of interesting characters in this book as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it from like page 1 to the end, just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, I quite loved it too. I mean, again, I know I shared this over our chat. I read this in 2 days, and that's always a surprise to me when I can do that with a book. But I just thought Amy, the author, did such a great job with kind of keeping you hooked. Like from little things, like she would share a little bit about a character, and then it would be, the character in a situation. And then suddenly you're like, okay, well, what happens next? You're kind of wondering, where she's going to lead you to with it. For example, when Lauren gets a text message and there's like one word in it, and then she chucks her phone across the room and you're like, that doesn't make sense. And then you later find out what the text said when you see it in full. So I thought she did a really good job of explaining these little tangled histories and family secrets with this backdrop of what's going on with this manatee, because we don't often talk about manatees, but it was such an interesting story. And even how it started with Ray speaking to Raina, you were like, what's happening here? I thought the characters were really interesting as well. And there was just enough that you could follow along with. I know some of our previous reads, they're multi-character books, and sometimes I feel like that kind of loses me. But I felt in this book, there was just the right amount with some nice background characters as well rolled in.
Yeah, I agree. The back and forth didn't confuse me. And I think every time we went back to a different character, or when we changed the page and we discovered something new about, a character we'd already been introduced to, you felt more for them. And I guess because we were understanding them a little more each time we would go and focus on their character and what was going on with them. So I think she played it out very well with each of the characters.
Absolutely. And with the manatee, which played like a huge role in this novel. And I didn't know what a manatee was, so I actually had to look it up and go, what is it? And I found all these pictures online, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that thing is adorable.
Yeah.
I can just, when they talk about when she pops up and you see her face and how Amy describes her eyes and everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like you can see right into her soul. I felt like every time that little, 1,000-pound mammal popped up, I just wanted to I wanted to reach out and touch it. So I really connected with this mammal, and I thought it was really interesting that that Amy created a character almost with this mammal, and I love, Ray. Ray was I don't know, I felt like he was just the storyteller kind of this novel. It starts with him, it kind of ends with him, and I loved his. He has a really great quote where he talks about Pebble, and he says, "I've always believed that all God's creatures are searching for the same thing: someone to be kind to them, to treat them with tenderness, to come to them at their level." And I feel like Amy, sort of like with the manatee, it's like I think the characters in her book are trying to get that as well, someone to understand them. I mean, I certainly had a problem understanding Imogen, Lauren's mom. Like, how can she flit across the world and just abandon her daughter to her sister? I don't know. How did you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had those thoughts too, because as a mom, I'm like, I couldn't even imagine being away for that long or not, being with my kids. But then not everyone, I think we've had these discussions, is meant to be a mom. People can have childbirth and create a being, but sometimes you just don't have that motherly instinct. So it's hard to judge, what someone goes through. And I know some moms, like, it took them a while to connect, like maybe they didn't connect to their children when they were babies, but now when they're little people with personalities and you can actually talk to them, it's not just all sleep, diapers, what has my life become? It kind of changes for many, and it seemed like she had moments she connected with her, but her life and what she wanted to do didn't allow for her to have a child, or she didn't want to make it work. Like, you see a lot of, the only one I can go off of is like celebrities. Like, a lot of times, you see someone like Pink, and she brings her daughter on tour. She puts her daughter on stage with her, and the child is very much a part of this chaotic world of what mom's job is, and she's brought in. And maybe there's other times she has to stay home, and the celebrities have lots of help and things like that. But they can also fly back and forth and be with their kids. But I think for just a regular person, if you have to go off and that is your job and that's how you earn income, and your child doesn't really fit into that world, it's tough. And so nice that she was able to have the support from her sister, who never really understood it, but at the same time let her kind of have that path. But yeah, you see at the end, you kind of get to that realization of what do you want from life when you get to kind of that end point? Will you be fulfilled with the kind of life you lived, or will you go back and have regrets?
I like your comparison to Pink, because I wonder what it would have been like if she was able to take her daughter with her, and, perhaps have her sister there as that support on her hobnobbing and, her work with the celebrities, or if she had a nanny, like so many celebrities do, an extra hand to help out. But part of me thinks that she didn't want her child there. She didn't want her to be part of it. I don't know if it was because she wanted to protect her, or if she just wanted to have her life as it always had been and not to include her in that, because then she wouldn't know how to roll with everything that was happening around her.
Well, it's when when Lauren told her she was pregnant, she was like, no, the child is going to ruin your life. Don't do it. And she's saying this to her own daughter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't have a relationship because of that. She told Lauren to not have her child.
Yeah, and that's why I think Lauren was trying to create this picture-perfect family, and her daughter was calling her out and being like, Mom, no, this is not what I want. But she's just trying so hard to give her daughter almost what she didn't have, and it's almost like smothering, because she just wants to do so much better than what she had.
I think, Imogen, there's a part in the book where when she's in Prague, which I love that, because I've been to Prague and I've been on the Charles Bridge, and I'm like, I totally get where you are. It's an amazing city. But she's doing her job, and Lauren is there, and she says, I never wanted a daughter. I wanted a son. Like boys, men, I understand, but I don't get women. And then she says, she thought that getting pregnant would ease the unease in her life. Like, what do you think her unease was? I found it hard to understand her, I guess, at times. And I think maybe I'll have to ask the author about that. But I just, I thought that, I tried to understand Imogen, and at times I didn't. Thought she was very selfish. But then a little part of me kind of felt like in my own world that I didn't have children, I can be a little selfish too, but I don't have a dependent other than my cats. Like I don't have somebody who's leaning on me, so I can kind of be footloose and fancy free. So I kind of get that with Imogen, but I don't know, that relationship
I
with
wonder
her daughter,
if,
that's messed up.
Yeah. You said, Tanya, that like you don't get her, you don't understand her, but I wonder if she really understood herself. And is that why, she didn't want to have a daughter, but maybe a son would change the outlook on a number of things in her life? Maybe she was still trying to process who she was supposed to be.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in this book.
There's a lot.
It just goes deeper and deeper. You think I'm going to, talk about this and what about this? And then you start kind of analyzing it and thinking about it after you've read it. And there's so many questions.
I loved all the descriptions too. Like I tried to picture, obviously the manatee animals in captivity, that's always heartbreaking. But I thought like if this place existed where there was an aquarium inside a ship and the fish would just come in and out from the ocean and flow into the ship and then roll out. And so it was like kind of a natural habitat. It would be beautiful if something like that was set up somewhere just for not those like bigger mammals and animals, but just like little everyday sea creatures. Wouldn't that be just so beautiful? Because it was like it would be like they could come as go as they please, but we could all see them.
Yeah,
I would love that.
I think
I have
that
a
would be
big problem
amazing.
with zoos and stuff. I mean, I understand. I understand when animals are going into extinction that we have to protect them and we have to set up breeding programs to try to keep them on this planet. But I find it hard to go to any place that holds animals in captivity because the pacing, and even, in this book and Amy writes about Pebble and she's at the bottom of this murky pool and she just goes around and around and around. And you find out that she's like at the end of the book, she's 80 years old.
Yeah.
She's been in that tank for 80 years. I mean, I guess I'm trying to humanize her, but she doesn't think like a human, right? She
But is
doesn't.
there-
I think there's
Is there comparison then to Imogen? Like circling the world and being alone, and she ends up dying alone as well in her trailer, and she's kind of left to her lonesome. And you think they're probably around the same age. I mean, I don't know what Lauren's age is, but maybe around that time. And yeah, like she wanted to be free, but maybe she really never was as free as she thought.
Oh, I think you nailed it.
Yes.
Wow.
Totally nailed it. Yeah, the comparison there. That's what. Yeah. And what did you think about swaying palms?
Oh, that's where I want to retire.
No kidding, right?
Even though like her trailer didn't, needed some upgrades, but it did remind me of a place that I would like to be. I don't know. It was very entertaining.
Yeah, and I love this quote, like Lauren, when she's and she goes and gets drunk with these ladies, and of course, and she's like, geez, I really just wish that I could get to a point, and Amy writes, that no longer gives a what people think of them, right? That Lauren wishes that she could fast track to that point, skip through all the middle stuff, and retire at Swaying Palms. And I'm like, yeah, hello to that. I like to be these ladies who just like play shuffleboard,
drinking all day.
They're drinking all day. And I love the marijuana for the glaucoma. Right?
Oh, I might have some too.
Yeah. When she first got the invitation to play shuffleboard, I'm like, oh my God, what would I do if somebody asked me to play shuffleboard? I mean, you'd have to go, but how amusing.
And even Carol, like shooting her with darts. She's on the lawn.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, we would never do that to our neighbor now, but maybe in 30 or 40 years when we've lived a full life and don't care anymore, we will be like, get off my lawn or I will shoot you with a dart.
Carol is an interesting study, Dr. Harvey. It's an interesting, like I found as a reader, because you find out that Carol and Imogen were very, very close.
Yeah.
And then, within like in the last 2 years, they weren't. And you're like always wondering like, what happened? What happened? And then you find out that how people can be so cruel to one another, right? Imogen was incredibly cruel in the things that she said to Carol. And it's like, no wonder Carol said, F you, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You go live your sorry little life, And
that's what
I love. Carol's always writing up like these.
The grievances.
The grievances. Oh my gosh.
There's a point where it says like back in 2017, she was only allowed to write like one grievance per week. I'm like, oh my God, she is busy.
Yeah. Well, think about it. If you're retired and you have nothing else to do, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and either just live your life or be annoyed at everybody else living their life, right?
Yeah, that's right. It gave her something to do, keep her mind occupied, just like a crossword would do.
What did you think? We didn't get a lot of the storyline between Lauren and her husband. What did you think? Did you feel like it was explained why? Did they just kind of grow apart? Like, what do you think happened there?
I think that obviously when there's a couple and one is always traveling, a lot of people, my gosh, I know so many people that can make it work, but I think there is a point where you have to wonder how much longer can you continue to do it, right? Like the honeymoon phase can only last for so long. So I wonder if there was more to his story than we learned. But I also think that Lauren just didn't see so many things. She was so preoccupied with, Simone, you'd mentioned, creating that perfect life that she didn't have. And she was focusing on so many things, yet not focusing on anything. So I don't think that she recognized that there would be anything wrong with her marriage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think they were so young and, they never, I think they just stayed in that space. And and had something happened where maybe when Lauren went to Florida with her mom and Imogen thought that maybe that would allow the breakup, and it didn't really happen. And there's a really kind of poignant moment in the novel where one of the ladies in Florida said, because Lauren's like, well, Jason knows me better than anyone. And one of the women in the trailer park says, well, just the people who've known us the longest aren't always the ones who know us the best, because sometimes they never see the person as they are now. They just live as they were. And I think that's true. I think that can be true sometimes. Our friends and people that we're with when we were young, sometimes they don't let us grow up.
Yeah, and it's what you choose to share with them. Like, you could meet someone, have a few glasses of wine, and just share your whole life story. And then you could be with your partner.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you just, sometimes you don't want that judgment, or that they're not close to you, so they can't really know everything. But the people closest to you, they know you. They might want to make decisions for you or offer their opinions, when sometimes you just want to be heard, or maybe you don't share as much with them, and you do start to grow apart. And it's like, even with Dove and Lauren, there was all these things Lauren didn't know about her own daughter, and her daughter didn't know about her mom. So it all just kind of came down to it. Yet they're together every day. So
Yeah.
I
really loved Dove and the Kazoo account where she's posting all the videos and getting like 800,000 followers on her videos of Pebble, and just this community that was growing. And then it's heartbreaking for Lauren when she doesn't even know that her daughter is doing this. She doesn't even know her daughter was kicked out of school. She doesn't know her daughter was bullied. There's just, wow, that relationship between them is just so fractured,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was a brilliant young girl, and she didn't have a chance, or didn't feel like she had a chance to really let her parents, well, in particular her mom, know or want to share that with her. And then, connecting with her grandmother and with this audience on her social platform. Yeah, it was, I'm sure it was a struggle for her, because she wasn't connecting with her as much as she had hoped.
Mm-hmm. And maybe some of our readers will find that some of this is happening in their own lives. I'm sure there's points when your children get to be teenagers or young teenagers that they just sort of dismiss their parents, and they have their own lives, and their parents are like, I don't even know what's going on with them. They won't talk to me. I just, they talk to their friends, they disappear, they're sullen, they're all of this. And a lot of that is happening in this book.
Even with kids, sometimes they have, like, they're on social media and they have fake accounts. Like, I had a friend who saw her daughter like had an account on Twitter and she didn't know, and the daughter posted something like, "Gosh, I hate my mom right now. She's just being really terrible." And then the mom went and found her on Twitter, saw that message, and was like, "Well, guess what? For being so terrible, I'm actually going to take your phone away." And she took her phone away because it's like sometimes you don't know if they're creating accounts or doing things that you can't keep a watchful eye on.
Yeah. And like kids are so, I mean, they don't have the tools to deal with stuff that happens, in the adult world. And they just don't know how to navigate their way through some of the horrible stuff that can happen online. It's kind of scary. If I were a mom, I'd be scared to death.
Yeah, they react so quickly, and then they can't take it back because it's online. It's out there.
But it was interesting how she pulled that video down, because after the relationship with Pebble, Dove kind of came to that realization that that's not who she wanted to be.
Yeah, she wanted to be associated with good things. Yeah. I like that.
That was nice.
The relationship that she has with her mom, maybe they were so similar. I mean, sometimes you don't see that. I think I have a lot of similarities with my mom, and there were times when we would, have a little squabble every once in a while, and then just kind of walk away and think, wait a minute. And then we became better friends, I guess, as adults. And looking back, I'm like, we're a lot alike, and that's probably why we had a spat here and there.
I think that's the thing with moms and daughters. It can be so, like, we can be the best of friends or like the worst enemies. And I think it's because we can be a lot alike. I think there's one point where Lauren, comes back from Cal's house and she looks in the mirror and she's like, well, people change their faces all the time for like, for security or for like when people change their identities, right? She's like, I wonder if I can get it done so I don't look like my mom. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom and I were very close, but we also fought, a lot because we were very similar. And I think maybe I didn't want to be like my mom. So I guess I can relate to Lauren. I can relate to Dove. Yeah.
What did you think about the ending when Pebble was transferred to a different aquarium and she no longer heard an echo? What was that last line? I don't have the book with me.
I have the last line. Do we want to say that, or do we want to? We'll say it because it's so powerful. It's like, she circles like she's done her entire life. It's the only thing she knows how to do. And then she calls out again and waits for the echo in her new home. And then through the dark, not an echo, an answer. It made me want to cry.
I teared up.
Oh, because I love animals so much. Like, I sometimes prefer animals to humans.
I know.
Wow.
I think a lot of us do have sometimes a better connection with the animal spirit than we do with, our fellow humans at times. There's something, and I think, Simone, you had mentioned earlier about, or maybe it was you, Tanya, sorry, you look into the manatee's eyes and they were able to see their soul. And there was, some kind of unexplained connection that you have with these creatures who we share this planet with.
I think it's because animals they don't have our brains, right? They're not complicated. And they are what they are. And every day, I mean, they say that every time doesn't mean anything to them. And they mention that in the book too, about whether Pebble feels time or whether it's just one long, like they're not like us. So I think with animals, we just they are the way they are, and we just take them as that, They're very true, I guess. They don't have any ulterior motives. They don't.
Yeah, and as hard as it is that she can't be freed because she doesn't know that life, this group of Ray and Dove were able to kind of bring her spark back, and now she's found someone to spend her last days with. Like, that kind of gives you a little bit of hope. But it's sad, but it kind of turned beautiful in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to meet a Pebble.
Well, apparently there's places in Florida, and you can swim with them.
We should.
Yeah, they're out in the open. Great.
Oh my gosh.
Because I think they say 1,000 pounds, and it's like I can't even imagine. But then they seem like they're just so adorable. Like they don't.
And gentle.
They say neither predator nor prey. They're a gentle giant. A gentle giant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
pretty cool. Mm-hmm.
Good read. Nice, easy read
Good.
and makes you feel.
Yes.
And yeah, I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. Awesome.
Now, this makes for the perfect time to speak with Amy Jones, who's the author of Pebble and Dove. Hello, Amy.
Hi, so nice to chat with you.
Hi.
We loved your book, so we're excited to chat with you. We've got a list of questions. So, Deb, why don't you lead us off?
Okay. We absolutely love Pebble and Dove. My goodness. Amy Jones, you really pulled out all of our emotions on this one. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to hear. It's exactly what I was trying to do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Back and forth with different characters. And each time we heard, something new or learned something new, I think we really got into them, what was going on with them even more so. But where did the idea come from?
It's sort of I think a lot of my work, it came from two different places. So, I've always been really fascinated by manatees, which is, maybe a little strange to say, but, when I spent a lot of time in Florida growing up and, as an adult as well. And, you see, they're just everywhere. If you're out on the water, you see them quite often. And I just thought, there's so much that I love about them. They're just such interesting creatures because they have no predators naturally in the wild, other than humankind, I guess. And also they don't prey on anything. So they're kind of just like these chill hippies of the sea who float around and just, they're very curious and playful and also quite resilient. So, the more I learned about them, the more I thought that, they had some really relatable qualities. And at the same time, I was working on this, a story about an intergenerational family story of, 3 generations of women. And I thought that the two would probably, kind of work really well together. So I kind of tried to weave them in together. And this is what it ended up coming out of it.
Yeah, speaking of the intergenerational storyline, you have Lauren, Imogen, and Dove. They're all such strong and engaging characters. So was there one that was more difficult to write for or easier to write for in your case?
That's a great question. I started with Lauren, and I think she was the hardest for a number of reasons. One being she was the starting point. So she was the one who I had to get to know first and who was kind of revealing the story to me as I got to know her. She's also the type of, just in her nature, she's a little bit guarded as a character. So even, and I know it sounds a little strange because I'm the one who made her that way, but it was a little bit hard to break through that shell a little bit and get to know her the way I got to know the other characters. And I actually started out just writing from her point of view. And then, most of my previous books as well have been sort of told from multiple points of view. So I thought this time I really want to write something that's just in one point of view. But the more I started writing it, the more that the other characters started kind of just, wanting to tell their own story. So I think because she has such a preconceived idea of how, her, especially her mother and her daughter, who they are, which isn't necessarily always accurate. I think the other characters kind of, they were like, no, I want to tell my story. I have to tell my side of this. So writing Dove came next, and that sort of came really easily to me because I think in some ways I still have the mind of a teenage girl. Yeah, and then Imogen was last. I kind of brought her in at the very end, and she was also a little. Her voice came a little bit more easily to me, just because I had already seen her through so many other different lenses. So when the time came for her to tell her own story, she was I knew her pretty well already. So really, it's just the getting to know the characters that can be hard, especially when they're the type of character that doesn't really want to let people in.
Mm-hmm. Amy, what about Ray and Raina? I mean, that was sort of I get Ray's connection with Pebble. And it's so beautifully written. But then there's this other side of Ray's home life falling apart. He and his wife, Raina has gone through 3 miscarriages, and it's so heartbreaking to read. So his story in amongst the other stories, how did that all come about, and what were you trying to sort of focus on by bringing him in and talking about his life both at home and also with his relationship with Pebble?
Yeah, so when I first sort of conceived of writing about Ray, he was always in the book just as he didn't have his own chapters. But, I started thinking about how I really wanted to have a different perspective on Pebble specifically, and sort of to understand her history and, sort of what her life was like through a different perspective. And I was really resistant to writing anything from her point of view. I had a suggestion that maybe if to bring in that sort of flip side to showing like not only her life but the aquarium and sort of how that like the rise and fall of that whole thing was sort of like, yeah, well, maybe you could do it from the manatee's point of view. And I thought, no, I didn't really want to do that. And then obviously I did relent a little bit at the very end and bring in one chapter from Pebble's point of view. But, I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to see this through her caretaker's eyes? And when I started writing his story, I didn't just want to make him be, functional in order to show that story. So his story started to come out a little bit more. And I also sort of thought of it as like, in some ways the flip side of Imogen in some ways, because, Imogen had, and Lauren as well, both, decided, they made different decisions about how they wanted to enter parenthood, and Ray and Raina were never really given that decision. So I wanted to sort of look at, that aspect of parenthood as well, and how there's so many different permutations of how like everybody in this world relates to parenthood, whether they have children or not.
Yeah, it is very complex. And I really loved how you did that, because I was thinking of that when I was reading, going, well, there's Ray and Raina who desperately want a child. There's Imogen who had a child and thinks it ruined her life. And then there's Lauren who wants to be the mom that she never had. And yet Dove is like, yeah, whatever, So yeah, it's really interesting,
Exactly.
really compelling.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I think one of the characters, or a lot of stories, the backdrop, the setting, or the location can become a character as well. And I think that the Swaying Palms Trailer Park was one of them. And it is so familiar. We've all agreed that we need to go there. We need to be there.
Yes.
But I have recently had a conversation with a friend whose parents are getting ready to go to Florida. They're snowbirds. And just hearing them talking about this place, this community they've been going to for a number of years, really, as I was reading about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, those characters, I know those characters. I know that's who they are. So it felt very familiar.
That's so good. I think that, there's so many communities like that in Florida. I did base Swaying Palms specifically on the place that I've been going since I was a child, and it was originally owned by my grandparents. And, when I was little, we would go down. And at that time, most of the inhabitants were Canadian. So my grandparents are from Nova Scotia, and some of their friends bought trailers there in the 60s. So it has been going for quite a while. And then over the years, it's slowly morphed into, I don't think there's too many Canadians down there anymore. It's mostly Americans, but there's still like a few people who were around when my grandparents were. And then when they passed away, they passed it on to my parents and to my dad and his brothers. So we spend a lot of time down there, like more so now, because they're down there for most of the winter now. My parents have now evolved into snowbirds as well. So when I started writing, I knew that I was going to set the story in Florida. And when I started writing about the trailer park, or the mobile home community, as they would refer to it, I didn't even realize that how much I was modeling it on that particular community. And in particular, the trailer, Imogen's trailer is like exactly like my parents' trailer, like the little
wow.
Yeah, the rock that has to go in front of the door, and the wrench that you need to turn on the shower. Yeah, it's they've done some work to it, but it's basically the way it was since my grandparents bought it. So yeah, and then I was looking it over. I was like, oh well, I guess that's how it's going to go. But I think it does feel familiar to a lot of people, because there's so many of those communities in Florida, and even though everyone has its own sort of personality and character, and it has its own politics and its own, interesting people that live there. and quirks and stuff like that, they all sort of have the same overall feel a little bit. So, I'm glad to hear that it did sound familiar, even though I was basing it on someplace specific.
Did you ever come across any Carol Harveys in your time there with the list of grievances? And
yeah, there's been a couple. In fact, the specific incident that she refers to in her letter about the beverages by the side of the pool is something that actually happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was like a whole thing. My stepmom was like swimming laps, and she had like a bottle of water so she could drink to hydrate herself while she was exercising, and someone complained because you weren't allowed to have beverages within like 5 feet of the pool or something like that.
Oh,
so she said, yeah. So, I mean, most of the time, I think it's like anywhere, right? You have bring a bunch of different people together, then some people are going to be real sticklers about rules, and some people are going to be a little bit more lax. And I think, a lot of times those communities can be protective as well, because even though, you're allowed to have your families there and stuff like that for a certain amount of time, it is a retirement community, and, a lot of people sort of want things to be quiet and peaceful and just sort of live in a particular way. So, you have to sort of take all of that, I think, with a little bit of grain of salt and a little kindness, which I was kind of, wanting to display by that was kind of why I decided to write a chapter from Carol's point of view, because, she was kind of such a curmudgeon throughout the whole book that I wanted to kind of show that, there's a little bit of a reason behind it as well, through her chapter, and also through, revealing a little bit about her and Imogen's relationship.
Yeah, at first she wasn't very likable, but it was nice to see that part of her when she's like to Dove, she's like, "Let's go, I'll take you there," and she kind of softened a little bit in that time. So that was nice to see.
I know, I love the part where she bought a remote and programmed to Imogen's TV and messed with her by playing different shows. I'm like, oh my gosh, she has way too much time on her hands.
Yes.
Of course she does. All of them do. I
think that's part of it too, right? Is especially if you're used to, having a family or working or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you're just every day is kind of the same. And some people really thrive in that, and some people get really bored and antsy.
Yeah. Well, I love Frank and him building all those things because he got bored. Yes. So he just gets up and builds these weird sculptures.
Yes.
I love it.
And then you got the shuffleboard ladies day drinking, having some marijuana for their supposed glaucoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
So fun.
Oh, that resonates. I want to go there.
I've never been to Florida, and I totally wanted to go to Florida after reading this book. Totally. Yeah. Especially that sunset, the way you described the sunset. I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know about the sunset, so I need to go. Seriously.
It's funny because on the Gulf Coast, the sun sets over the water, and on a lot of the beaches, you'll see people wait for the sunset, and then they applaud, which I think is really cute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
people
that's
will
cool.
plan their weddings on the beach right at sunset, so you see a lot of weddings as well. Yeah, it's really lovely. I know Florida there's some negatives about Florida for sure, and it gets a bad rap, but generally I think it's such a beautiful place. Just the nature there is just so different from what we have up here in Canada. So I think it's just if you go there and you can appreciate it for what it is, I think it's, and obviously it's also nice and warm when we're freezing up here. So
yeah,
Amy, I have to ask you: are those ants real? Are those ants that crawl up Lauren?
That actually happened to me. That was something that
oh my goodness!
No.
Yeah, so I didn't step on it, but I was getting out of a kayak, and I put my hand down to help myself out on the ground, and then I put my hand right in the fire ant hill. I looked down and I just saw them. I was like, why is my hand turning red?
So can you shake them off, or do they not fall off?
No, I shook them off, and then I put my hand immediately in the water, but I still have I probably had about 50 bites all over my hand and my forearm.
Oh my gosh.
They weren't they're not venomous, I don't think. I was too scared to Google it. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. They turned into they look like little blister, little pustules all over my hand for a few days. It was, yeah. And I think I was just like pulsing from the adrenaline of it. So I was like, oh no.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. But they're all, you have to be really careful. Like it's the thing about nature there, right? Is that it's just so pervasive. Like it will try to get into your house. It will be all over you at all times. So you really have to to also be on guard, especially if you're spending any time outside, on the water or, in the woods or anything like that. You really have to sort of be a little bit more on guard than you would here, I think.
Yeah. Amy, is there something that no one has asked you yet about the book that you wanted to share?
I've been racking my brain about this one. I honestly, I don't think so because really, once I put a book out into the world, I never know how people are going to respond to it or the things that are going to be interesting to them or things that they're going to want to talk about or things that they'll pull out of it. And often I don't even know sort of what the themes are that I'm dealing with until readers pull them out. And so one of my favorite things is just, having these kinds of conversations and seeing what kind of questions people come up with. I guess my favorite thing to talk about in relation to the book are manatees. Because I love talking about the relationships and the characters and stuff like that as well. But I did so much research into manatees, so I know so many random manatee facts and just learned so much about their history and how for instance, they have, for a long time, they were on the endangered species list. And then they've just been, I don't know if they say downgraded or upgraded, but they've sort of been delisted, I guess is the word that they use, from the endangered species list, even though their numbers are still really declining a lot, mostly due to outside factors, sort of human-made factors. The depletion of the environment is a big one. They primarily eat seagrass. That's they're pretty much their whole diet, and seagrass populations are depleting really rapidly because of, rising ocean temperatures and things like that. So I really just, I guess I just like to try to get the word out about, things that we can do to help manatees. One in Florida is also their relationship with boats because they are naturally really curious and playful. And I know when I've been out kayaking, they'll come right up to your rudder and they'll boop their nose against your rudder because they just want to know what it is. They're this is, especially the younger ones. And of course you can't do that with a power boat. Most of the older manatees that you see in the wild will have dents on them actually from propellers. It's really common.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, there's been this decades long battle between conservation groups trying to get boaters to slow down. But of course, Floridians love their boats, so they don't want to slow down. There are areas though that they're making more protected areas for manatees where boats have to go slow or no powerboats are allowed. So that's some steps in the right direction to helping them. But really, I think just getting the word out there about manatees, they're important to the ecosystem, and also just the things that we can do to help them thrive a little bit more.
And if you're not out kayaking, and hopefully you're not in a boat that comes too close to them, are there other areas where you can see them from shore? To just kind of take them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they like really sort of shallow water. So anywhere on the intercoastal waterway in Florida, you can see them. Sometimes they're just hanging out at the end of people's docks, just relaxing. A lot of the viewing areas actually that they have for them in Florida, in the winter, they tend to congregate around power plant outflows where the water is warm. So you'll see sometimes dozens of them congregating around in these areas that they've actually now designated. It seems weird to have that relationship with a power plant, but they're areas that have been designated as protected areas for manatees because that's where the warm water is coming out, so they tend to congregate there. And also because they can actually live in brackish water as well. So there's Blue Springs or Crystal River, Homosassa. Those are all manatee protected areas where they tend to congregate in the winter because the water is warmer. And you can just walk up. They actually, I think at Crystal River they have like a viewing area where you can actually go underground and there's glass and you can look out and see them like from underwater, which is really cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And it's mostly like you'll see them. It's usually from like around this time of year until like March is like the best season for viewing them. And then they tend to disperse once the water gets a little bit warmer and they travel a little bit. So they do migrate a bit north. You know, sometimes people have seen them in like the Carolinas and Georgia and stuff like that. So they tend to disperse a little bit in the summer months, but in the winter months is the best time to get down there and go see them.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So, Amy, what's next for you? We also thought this could maybe turn into a motion picture. The story was so great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would love that. I mean, I always tend to see when I'm writing, I tend to sort of see what's happening playing in my head as if it's a movie. So I definitely have thought of it. I'm not sure how. I guess now with CGI, they might be able to like make a manatee. But yeah, no, that would be great. And you know, in the meantime, I'm just gonna keep writing. I've got a new novel in the works. This one has nothing to do with sea creatures. It's be about relationships between women because that's my wheelhouse. That's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in writing about.
Well, we look forward to reading that when that comes out.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Amy, so much for your time today.
I really enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, great
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I want to get up close and personal with a manatee now, or at least maybe get close to something similar to Pebble, whether that be in the animal form or human form. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us have a little bit of Pebble in us. That's what I like to think.
Yeah,
that's a nice thought.
Thank you so much, Amy. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.